Want to be able to see the screen. No, we are not playing monkey see, monkey do, okay? Or hear no evil, see no evil, do no evil, or speak no evil, whatever. Kind of looks like it's set up for that. But we're excited to be back. I don't think there's been a time in my life in a long time that I've been out of a church for 2 weeks straight. I was telling a few people before the service that the first Sunday that we were not here, we were in Lima with the missionary family we're staying with, getting ready on a Sunday morning to head back to the airport. We were there barely 24 hours and getting ready to fly again, which, flying once and being at a certain location for a few days, that's one thing, but to go fly again, this time we were able to fly from Lima to Cusco. It was only about an hour flight, and there we did the majority of the ministry that we felt God was calling us to be able to do. And then this last Sunday, which turned out to be a beautiful service, which we watched on Facebook, we were flying again. But it is good to be back home, and we have some things that are going to be up on the screen for you, some pictures that we're going to talk about, and there's many more. It's like we can't possibly in a service like this be able to fit all of the pictures of all of the events that took place, but we're going to give you a snapshot of all that we did, and I guess I'm first, huh? Notice the first screen here. This was what we did Saturday morning. We got to the property location, probably I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, we had to be up at 8 o'clock that same morning, barely any sleep, to get ready to participate in this activity that many of you have given towards. Many of you have given towards Pennies for Peru. The big penny jar that we have in the narthex, you've given your spare change. Some of you have given dollars and a good chunk of money towards. That's what this activity is, Pennies for Peru. And you see the three characters on the screen there with the caricatures of the animals. Well, we helped participate. Didn't know we were going to until they said, here, you're going to do this. And of course, most of you know that the native language in Peru is Spanish. And language was not a barrier. At times it was difficult because you wanted to say so much and do so much, especially with the children. The children came up to us and just a lot of questions, and they like to speak fast. And that makes it, I know un poquito of Spanish, but even the children were speaking fast. So it made it difficult at times, but as you were around the people, the adults and the children, you found a way to communicate. And you didn't have to live in fear of, am I not going to understand? Am I going to, look like an idiot by saying the wrong thing? You know what? God really blessed, especially in this area. What is Pennies for Peru? Every Saturday during the year, different groups from BCM Peru get together and have an outreach to children. It's a children's ministry that people from the United States have given money towards to give them a great Bible lesson, highly energized music in which the kids were dancing, they were clapping, they made the Bible story very interactive, and they were giving out prizes to the kids, and it was just amazing. The offerings that had come in from our church alone helped put a smile on a lot of these kids' faces. And right at the very end of Pennies for Peru, after all of the hoopla was done, we passed out some wholesome snacks and treats to them because if you can kind of see that picture right behind Daniel, that middle picture there, he's got that goofy grin on his face. Well, you see the home area that's right behind him. That's an upgrade compared to where the other children live. Some live on the streets, no family, doing their best to struggle to survive. Some have left orphanages, and their orphanages have improved and everything. Some just live in cardboard shacks. Barely any rain that ever hits that area. And so some of the roofs, it's like a makeshift metal roof. And so their living conditions are not what we would be accustomed to. And so they don't get good nutrition. And so disease, sickness happens quite a bit. But you see some of the other people. You see the girl dressed up as a zebra. She is that Karina?
And she was actually from an orphanage.
Yes. So she knows exactly how to relate to some of these children. Now, some of those children were from the community that we were having the Pennies for Peru event, and so they sent out some of the team out to knock on doors saying, we're having an event for children. If you would like to come out, come on. Some of the parents did. As a matter of fact, I don't think we have any pictures here, but we took our own pictures. They had kind of like these little bleachers where the parents actually came and saw what was happening with their kids. And some of the missionaries actually got to witness to the parents. And it was like after they broke up into their small groups, after all the events took place, they brought the gospel to the children. Well, there were so many supporters from the missions team, the BCM Peru missions team, that they actually went into the bleachers and were sharing the gospel with the parents. And it was just a great opportunity to be able to see what your money, our money, went to go towards. It wasn't something that was a social event. Yes, it did meet a physical need, but we saw the spiritual need. And the kids had a blast. There must have been 50, 60 kids at this one event. Okay?
Next, I'm going to talk about the children's program. Once we left in Lima, or the village we were in, we went back to the property. I had an event, and then Den and Daniel went to a skateboard event. My event was for the missionary children. I like to do a party to thank them. They work right alongside with their parents, and they do ministry right along, and they sacrifice their parents' time from them. So we want to always thank them for what they do. So we collected items. You all gave bags for specific children. And so those emoji bags are what I bought to throw all of our gifts into. And I can tell you that for some of them, once they got them, I never saw them off of them. I probably think they showered with them. What is also not in here is even up to yesterday, I was getting pictures. Some of the missionaries that we didn't get to see until we went to Cusco, we gave them their children's gifts to take back to the jungles. And I've already been getting pictures of their children with their bags on constantly and coloring and using the toys and the things that we gave them, and they are not leaving their side. So what a blessing that you guys have been. We did games, which I taught them how to make out of cups and balloons that we cut and put on the bottoms, and then we put ping pong balls that I wrote their names on, 3 each. And it's a good thing I did, because those balls were flying everywhere, and nobody would have known which ones were theirs. And then I got from the dollar store those little hampers and made them into snowmen. And their goal was to shoot them into, as you can see my face, most of them were hitting me, and which they enjoyed highly. And then we had a meal, and Ruth Ann did me a huge favor and made these snowman suckers out of chocolate, which I took over in my carry-on, thinking, okay, I'm still going to be in a warm environment until I get to them. So when we went to hand them out, I was like, okay, a lady in our church made these for you. and God protected them and they didn't melt, so you get to enjoy them. And so that was a blessing because it was really warm until we got there. And just the smiles, and each one just, there's pictures that I could not put on here, but there was, the parents, there was a picture of me with each kid getting their bag, and the hugs were priceless. And just, I really thank you for being a part of that. Such a small thing means so much more to them than it does our children in our country. And I will continue to get pictures of them using and doing the things that you sent with me for them, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, we'll go on to the next slide. This is the skate competition. It's crazy because everything we're talking about was within the first 24 hours. So we just did a lot before we even left to go to Cusco. So this skate event was quite a journey, honestly, just to get there, because there was someone who was supposed to pick us up at like 3 o'clock, I think it was, and the driver never showed up. And then we found out he got into a small accident, car accident, and it was an off-duty police officer, so it got a little bit complicated. And so we ended up meeting up with him, and he drove us out to the skate event. This church I worked with the last time I was in Peru, and they just really love to reach out to the skateboarders. So they just threw on a huge event and just had a great time, and we were able to do different type of competitions and just skate and hang out with the young people there. And then at the end, I shared the gospel, was able to present the gospel to this group, and also to encourage the local church, because there's not a lot of churches that are doing what they're doing as far as, doing a specific ministry to reach out to skateboarders. So I always find it important to encourage the local churches. But that event was just very successful event, had a lot of kids come out, and even just people that were watching on the streets that stopped, they were hearing the gospel as well. So it was a really great event. So.
We're doing next.
Okay, the next slide that we're going to show you is just a summary of our time in Cusco. One things that you won't see on here, we did, when we first got there, I had folders for all of the couples, and inside each folder, they had the material we were going to cover. They had, on the front, it said, in a much beautiful way that I'm going to say it, but in Spanish, don't forget to kiss me goodnight, because we talked about marriage. Inside, I stapled 2 mints as a funny, make sure your breath is good before you kiss me goodnight, and they thought that was funny. And then inside each one was an envelope of money from what we collected from our church that we divided amongst missionaries so that they could enjoy themselves while they were in Cusco, because most of them barely got the money together to come to the conference. And when we were in Lima before we left, the missionary Jonathan said, I don't know what you're thinking, but a lot of these missionaries won't be able to do any of the sightseeing or eat while we're there because they barely had enough to scrape together. And I said, well, we have that covered. So the first day they got their envelopes and were able to enjoy themselves, eat with us. We toured many beautiful areas, and we went there to encourage the missionaries. And so even in the luxury of getting to tour around to some of these ruins and stuff, we were still ministering to them and encouraging them. We were on vehicles, listening to them, even if we didn't understand. To sit there and hear them, the camaraderie and the unity and the laughter that they don't always get to do because they're so busy and they're struggling. So that was beautiful for us. We started out Monday. We were supposed to teach Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday mornings. Due to the fact that we went into Cusco on Monday, found out that the government was shutting down on Thursday to protest. We could not,
the workers.
The workers. So we could not take our trip to sightsee on Thursday. So we changed it to Tuesday. So we taught Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. This was a gift because of the way that it went. Our schedule ended up, we kept it the same on Wednesday. And our schedule on Wednesday was to teach something, teach the marriage questionnaire and to give them time to go and do it, and then sit as couples and go over and talk about it. If we had done it the way we had planned, Wednesday would have been the last day of teaching, and then Thursday would have been our touring, and they would not have had the quality time. And then Thursday ended up being the day that they had separate time to ask us questions, and we would not have had that. So God just arranged that so beautifully for us, because what we did not know is that we taught on balance and ministry, that God is first, that family is second, and your ministry is third. If you lose your family, you lose your ministry. And that was very hard for them to understand, because they believe that God and ministry are the same and family comes second. They also were struggling with their marriage and relationships.
Unbeknownst to us.
Unbeknownst to us. So when God laid it on our hearts in February what to teach, it was exactly what they needed to hear. We should not be surprised by that.
Right.
Because God is God.
A lot of these missionary couples, probably under the age of 30. We had 16, 17 couples that sat under our teaching. And while we were teaching, we talked about health and nutrition. We talked about the body being the temple of God. Then we talked about healthy balance within marriage. And the centerpiece of what we were teaching, we took from a book called His Needs, Her Needs. Willard Harley wrote this. He's got a website called marriagebuilders.com, and Christian psychologist. He's helped a lot of marriages over the years. Well, one of the questionnaires that he has on his website and in his book is called the Emotional Needs Questionnaire. And the Emotional Needs Questionnaire is for married couples, and it targets 10 of one's emotional needs. And so couples had to, by themselves, fill out what they believed were their emotional needs. They had to fill out all 10 and rank it to figure out which one was more important than the other for themselves. Then the couples would get together and share the results. And that was tough.
If you see in the one corner where Den and I are sitting at a table, I have Chantel on my side and Den has Jonathan on his side. What we did there was take our questionnaire that we did together, which we've done many times, but we did it again in February. We sat there, and what we allowed them to do was eavesdrop on our emotional need conversation, so that they could see actually how you respectfully, lovingly communicate and find out how to use it. It was a way for them to see in churches and over there, but in churches, like, there are subjects that are like taboo to talk about. But if nobody talks about them, then things won't change. And so we talked about, like, the second emotional needs is sexual fulfillment. And as awkward as it could be, we spoke throughout that emotional need. And because in marriage, that and money are the things that tear marriages up. So we did that, and after we took our break, after 5 sessions, we did the 5 first emotional needs, and I asked Chantel, whose mother-in-law and father-in-law were sitting in the audience amongst the students, and I said, you did a really good job doing those emotional needs, and she said, I made no facial expressions and no eye contact. That's how I survived it. But that was one of the areas that after that they kept coming up to us and thanking us for being transparent, because nobody talks about that. So we went through that, and then we let them break up. And the beauty of knowing what was going on and watching them go separately, and there were a couple that I knew were struggling, and Den will tell you more about that. Watching them go over their emotional need from a distance and hearing them laugh made us cry. It was so beautiful. The next day when we split, we did another session, and then we did question and answers. I can tell you when I took the women to our room had a big open area, and so that's where we sat. And one after another, talking about, I didn't know that my husband felt this. I didn't know that my husband needed this. And we've talked about it, and the sobbing and the breaking down, and the women saying, I felt alone, and now I know it's not just me. And the laughter through it, like it was just so emotionally amazing. And then we were supposed to do that for an hour, which ended up being more an hour and a half. And when we were done, we sent somebody over to make sure the guys were done. They were not.
So the men actually had a longer session. Usually men don't really open up about their needs and everything. 2 men got very emotional in front of other men. One of them, again, we didn't know any of these missionaries except for the director and his wife. One of the men responded that a month before this retreat that we were getting together, him and his wife were talking about divorce. Missionary couples talking divorce. They put on a good face, nobody knew their struggles, and all of a sudden this questioner is presented to them. And when they got together, they both determined, the husband actually just saw a 24-year-old young man and just fell apart. And of course he's speaking in Spanish and things are being interpreted to me. All of a sudden, the other missionary men start chiming in, giving him support. The oldest missionary man that was there, him and his wife had been married late in life, but he said, you know, when my wife and I had troubles, we always went back to the love chapter, 1 Corinthians 13. I understood that much. And he was across the other side of the room, and he's telling this other brother in Christ, he's saying, you don't have to go through the struggles alone. That's what we are here for. And for men to be able to do that and to be transparent and to show their needs. Another man, fairly newly married, his wife is struggling a little bit with infertility and actually had a miscarriage, and it really devastated her. He doesn't know how to help her, to understand, and he broke down. And as he shared, I broke down, but other men chimed in, and just what a time of unification, of seeing everyone work together. And all this happened because of God's divine mercy and people's prayers. Some of you were able to give. Some of you were able to pray. Many of you were able to pray. We did not know what to expect. And especially with a language barrier, we were wondering what we could understand. But I tell you what, God broke the barrier, and he really opened things up for us.
When I was done my ladies group and very emotional, and I walked over to find Den, he could not even talk to me at first because of just the emotion. And by the time we finally got over and were able to start talking, it was just above and beyond what we could ever have imagined. And that continued the conversation of hugs and conversations from these people, and still that we're fighting. We're in this, we're fighting, and we're gonna keep communication with you because we don't live on the property in that close-knit community. So they message us, and we have our translator on our phone. So they can talk to us because we don't live there. they can open up to us in a way that maybe they can't there. The other thing that happened that I'm not even sure Den knows is when they got back to property and had their wrap-up session, now the ladies, the men, they know that there's a need for mentoring, especially the younger. So I'm getting messages, so-and-so is mentoring me now. They're my mentor. Because I talked a lot about mentoring. Next slide. I talked about mentoring a lot, especially we had a ladies meeting, and in that meeting, we played games, and we ran around doing a scavenger hunt. Not speaking Spanish, that was fun. But we had lots of fun and we won, so that's okay, that's all I knew. But the ladies they made aprons for myself and for Jasmine as a wedding gift. So we had Jasmine in the middle of us. And just again, once we had that meeting, there were some other things that they were struggling with, and that ended up being another conversation. And God, again, my devotional that I had for them was, again, exactly what they were asking and what they needed. So God, it was just beautiful. The hats and gloves in the bottom, when we left to go for our touring on Tuesday, Monday night we put out all the hats and gloves, and the ladies got to choose what they wanted, because we were going to be 11 and 12,000-ish plus feet above sea level, where we were going to be touring, and it's very cold, and for them it's colder. And so they loved them, and pretty much they wore their hats the whole time. So thank you for that. It was a beautiful blessing. Daniel is, by the way, he walked off. Daniel has not been feeling well, so he asked me to speak. I was actually in Cusco. We had the opportunity as a whole group. Again, everyone wanted to go see Daniel skateboard. And because of the money that we had, we were able to pay for transportation for all of us to go.
So all of the missionary couples infiltrated Cusco. In this area that they did the skateboard event, it's an actual small area. It's like a median in between two streets. Well, they put together skateboard ramps and everything, and it was so good to see all ages coming out to this. And Daniel didn't know this till he got to this event, that this was publicized. This event was publicized on Facebook, and Dan's name was mentioned in this Facebook post. That it went like this: Dan Gray, highly ranked skateboarder from the United States, is going to be here to do some demonstrations. And you talk about being under pressure, and he's not highly ranked. I mean, he's good, but. And he represents a Christian skateboard company and everything, but and Daniel, he struggles with the English language, we'll put it that way. But when he got there and dealt with the young guy, there were some young adults and there were some teenagers that were there. It was interesting to see the universal language that skateboarders have. Yeah, they were speaking Spanish, but somehow they were able to communicate with Dan, and Dan was able to communicate with them, and they understood where each other was coming from. And Dan did have a translator there, David, who was sitting next to him. At this event, we believe there was two that came to know Christ as their Savior, as he gave an invitation. But
yeah, the unique
amazing
thing during that one, I had toys that a company had given me that fly up and light up and come down in their helicopter-like things. I was able to pass them through some of the fencing to the kids, and they were running around having a great time with that. The other thing was the two people that we believe came to know the Lord. The one guy actually was praying out loud, which made Daniel have to stop, because he would pray and then the interpreter would say it, And then this guy was saying it out loud. So Daniel's like, oh, I need to slow down because that's the time lapse between the two. And the one guy that we believe came to know the Lord, the church and the pastor was there. This skateboard guy had been attending their church and was seeking. And they're like, he is right on the edge, and we're praying that when you come, he goes the rest of the way. And that happened. So they were praying for him before Daniel got there and did the presentation. So, but it was just beautiful, and that everybody, our missionaries actually, a couple of them were trying to skateboard as well. Jonathan, the head of our mission board there, wiped out bad. And he picks on me all the time, so I tried not to laugh about it, but I did. So that was a beautiful moment.
And it was so great to be able to see the missionaries reaching the children that were nearby. There was actually a single missionary who, not married or anything. I actually saw him across the street. There was a teenager kind of staying his distance. Well, this kind of older missionary guy walked over and befriended him and started talking to him, and he had his attention. His name is Guillermo, and you can tell Guillermo was making strides with this young man, and it was just so great to see everybody involved. And again, these missionaries survive on little to nothing. And they sacrifice, and because of some extra money that came in that you all had given, it allowed us to be very generous in helping them to come out to this event.
It also allowed us to help the one that had the car accident. We were able to help because they don't have, and it wasn't his fault.
Many don't have car insurance.
But he hit a police officer, so obviously it was his fault.
The vehicle.
And so we were able to help them. We were able to help ones that got a motorcycle, but they couldn't afford the insurance, and that's what the couple used to get back and forth for ministry. And we were able to pay for 1 year of insurance for them so they could do that. We were able to supply, we gave a lot of handshakes with money. For needs that were there, and we still have some in our Peru fund that we keep hearing needs. Oh, the last one, there was ones that were trying to get back to the jungle, and there was so much traffic they missed their flight, and they couldn't get back to their children. And we were able to Western Union money to them so they could fly the next day to get home, or they wouldn't have been able to. So those are just few stories. There were many that your money supplied for these people to be a blessing and to help them. And there are some, the biggest prayer, I did ask for prayer requests from each lady when we were having our meeting. And a lot of them is they need prayer for balance, balancing their family and their ministry and their marriages. They need prayer for support. They live on, we go over there, our dollar is, we get 3 of their dollars to our $1. So their soul days.
US dollar goes a long way.
If not more.
Yep.
And so they are living, some of them have lost support, and they already don't have much, but people that couldn't support them anymore. We sent money to them, and Den and I we have our own money that also goes with the mission money over there. And what we send was divided up between 17 missionaries. 17. So what looked like a lot that went over there, the last 3 quarters was divided and probably was $24 to them. $24 of our money, so about 75 soles. So when we give to BCM, we are giving to 17 families. And the difference is we love the prison ministry. We love Gideons. There's all the missionary organizations that we support. And we need to keep giving to them because they're reaching people through Bibles and the daily breads. But when we give to these people, we are supplying their livelihood.
Yeah.
Without people like you all, they may have to decide how to stretch one meal. Or they have to decide how they're going to get transportation to do ministry, to witness and to lead these children to know God. So when you're giving in general missions, remember that all of our missionaries are very important, and that when you give to BCM, you are giving to more than just BCM, a mission organization.
Yeah.
You're giving to families. And you see these faces, these are our family. The missionary, Jonathan's parents were there, and before she left, she gave me a big hug and said, "Thank you for loving my people." And I looked at her and she goes, "Thank you for loving our people," because they are our people. And they need our encouragement. And first off and foremost, continue praying for them. And pray for their balance, pray for the support, pray for other people that God may lead to support them and find ways to help them.
They're human. They struggle just like you and I in different areas. So prayer goes a long ways.
So we want to end by saying thank you for giving to the Lord, because these lives were changed and are continuing to change. We have our displays up here of things that they made, a lot of things they gave us from their villages to thank us. The plate on this end is a gift to our church from them for what you did for them. There is purple candy corn here that they make juice out of as well. Please take one. And there is roasted corn that is like popcorn to them, and it is, because I think I ate a whole bag. And so please come up and enjoy those and see what we brought back.
Okay. Well, time to close out the service. Take your hymn books, turn to 435. 435. And if you're able to, why don't you stand with us as we sing our closing